In today's episode of the Red Delta Project podcast, I'm going to be teaching you how you can break free of one of the most toxic thoughts and ideas within our fitness culture that keeps you from making real long-term progress and out of the endless cycle of just starting and stopping programs and ultimately not getting very far. Thank you very much for joining me, my friend, today on the Red Delta Project podcast. My name is Matt Schifferly, founder of the Red Delta Project. And again, these episodes are sponsored by the books that I write and self-publish on Amazon. Check out the link down below if you're watching this on YouTube, or reddeltaproject.com for links to all of my self-published books, including Grind Style Calisthenics and Smart Bodyweight Training. Also, of course, I forget to mention this every time, but I have a ton of free ebooks as well under the free resources tab at reddeltaproject.com as well. All right, so today what we're doing is we're talking about getting out of what I call the honeymoon cycle. The honeymoon cycle is this endless cycle that is so easy to get trapped in, where we're constantly trying new things, we're program hopping, we're diet hopping and stuff. And what ends up happening is it's a lot of motion and a lot of work and a lot of energy spent, but ultimately you don't end up going really anywhere and you end up exhausting yourself. And the reason why this works is because there's this pervasive idea in our fitness culture that diet and exercise habits are supposed to stimulate endless change, that you should just constantly be losing weight. They should constantly be getting stronger and building muscle at a regular clip. I've had people ask me, like, should I be losing like 1.5 pounds a week, or should I be losing 2 pounds a week, or is that too much or anything? That change should just be this reliable, endless thing that's always coming and it's always noticeable. And if we have the right diet and exercise program, we should just be making gains and making progress for years on end. And it's complete boohickey. It is absolutely impossible to be doing this, but we keep thinking it's going to happen. The reason for that is because we enter in what is called the honeymoon phase whenever we start a new diet and exercise program. So when we're at our baseline and we hit our body with some sort of a new stimulus, change our diet, change our workout program, whatever, and we notice an initial uptick of progress. This is what I call the honeymoon period. We're like, oh wow, my body is changing. I really notice it. I can feel a difference. I can sense how much I'm changing day by day and week by week. And we have this honeymoon period and we're on our way and we're growing and we're improving. This is it. I found the magic formula, right? And this period can last anywhere from several days, several weeks, several months, hell, even a couple of years in some cases, depending on how severe that hit is to your system and how different it is and how well you take to it. But anyway, we're on our trajectory and we're like, yeah, this is great. It's like a plane taking off. We're like gaining altitude. We keep going higher and higher all the way to the moon, baby. Yeah, we are doing great. And eventually, bloop, and it levels off. And we're like, no, wait, no, hold on. It's not supposed to do that. It's not, my weight's not supposed to plateau. I still got more to lose. I still want to build more muscle. Like, why is it plateauing? And that's when I get people asking me questions and stuff like, what's going on? What am I doing wrong? What's happening? And the answer is nothing's wrong. That's exactly what's supposed to happen. But it doesn't seem like it depending on our perception. Because when we're in that honeymoon period, we think things are going great and we expect it to continue, but it always levels off. No matter how hard you work, no matter what program you're following, no matter how you try and change it and modify it and work with the formula, you will always level off. It's like, again, that plane is taking off. Eventually, you're going to hear that old, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for flying. We've reached our cruising altitude of 32,000 feet. Now, you wouldn't stand up and be like, 32,000 feet? We're not supposed to level off. We're supposed to just keep going up into outer space and past the moon. Like, we're not supposed to level off. This is absurd. I want my refund. What's wrong with this airplane? But that's the exact attitude we have with our fitness. When we level off, we think something's wrong. But the answer is, of course, nothing is wrong, because that's exactly what's supposed to happen. During this honeymoon phase, when we're making our initial changes, the reason why we're making changes is to get to that plateau, is to level off. Because when you start a new diet, when you start a new program, you're hitting your body with some sort of a stimulus, a shocking whatever it is, like strain in the muscle, calorie imbalance, something in your digestive process, right? Whatever it is, it's a shock to the system. And your body's kind of like, oh boy, oh, ow, okay, I gotta change a few things here in order, because we've got this new scenario in our environment, and I've got to change these gut bacteria, and I've got to change this appetite, and I've got to change how our metabolic process and how this muscle can work and cardio system responds to it. So making all these changes and stuff. And during that period of our honeymoon, we're like, yeah, this is great. I'm changing. This is awesome. With it. And then eventually your body gets back to homeostasis, and it's like, whew, oh man, thank heavens we got back to homeostasis. And that's when we're leveled off and we're like, what the hell is this? This isn't supposed to happen, but of course that is. Because always remember, an organism or a cell or an animal or even an entire species that cannot regain a homeostatic state dies off. I know it's kind of morbid to think about, but if you don't hit that plateau in your diet and exercise program, your diet and exercise program will injure you, it will hurt you, and eventually it will kill you. Which I know sounds morbid, but that's the reality of it. You have to regain homeostasis if you want to stay healthy and survive. You cannot be healthy and continue living in a constant, endlessly changing state. If you keep losing weight, you starve to death. If your muscles continue growing, you get all out of imbalance and stuff. There are very complicated organic systems in your body to prevent you from changing beyond a certain level. No matter what you do, I know you want to keep changing, but your body's best interest for survival and health is to not change. So that's why we go through this honeymoon period, we hit that plateau, we think something's wrong, plus our motivation goes way down, because while we're in this state, we're more motivated. We're always more motivated in a changing positive state, because humans are more emotionally motivated through a change of state rather than the actual state we're in. Like if you're making $1 million a year, eventually you get to a financial homeostasis and you think, okay, big deal, $1 million a year, whatever. And if you take a $100,000 hit to $900,000 a year, you would be like, this is terrible. This is horrible. You would lose sleep over it. But if you were at $50,000 a year and made another 20 grand a year, you'd be like, woohoo, this is great. I am so excited. This is fantastic. It's not our current state that gets our emotional state, up or down, makes us happy or sad. It's the change of our state. So when we're in a constant change of our state, if it's progressive, we think this is great. We're willing to keep working hard. But once we plateau, you keep having to work hard, but you're no longer in a changing state. So your emotional motivation nosedives. So at that point, you're like, well, what am I doing this for? There's no point to it. You abandon your current program and you're right back to square one. And you get a new program. And if it's a big enough stimulus, you get back in that progressive state until you plateau, and then you back down, and you end up in what we call that honeymoon cycle. You're constantly trying new things. You're constantly thinking the next one's going to be the thing that's going to break the cycle, because somewhere out there, there's got to be some way to just endlessly make progress. Somewhere out there, there's got to be an airplane that just takes you up and up and up into the stars. And so you just keep boarding new vehicles looking for that thing. But of course, that's not how things work. Is we make progress, we achieve a homeostatic state, and then we level off with our cruising altitude. And I'm here to tell you that when you get to that cruising altitude, that's a very good thing. One, because you get to keep on living and being healthy. But two, that's where the real value is. For several reasons. One is when you level off, you want to make sure that when you are using new methods, that you use methods that you have an affinity for the intrinsic value of the method itself. Whenever someone is saying, I'm going to do this diet or this workout program to elicit a change, they're motivated as long as they feel change is happening. But once the change stops, if the only motivation you have for that diet or exercise program is to elicit the change, then your motivation stops and you go right back down to square one. So that's why I'm always telling people, do things that you enjoy doing for the intrinsic value of doing them in the first place. Do exercise you like to do that makes you feel good. Adopt dietary habits that you enjoy the food you're eating, that it makes you feel good, so that way you have long-term motivation to do this, so that even if your body doesn't change at all, you step back and be like, yeah, but I still like what I'm doing. I still have a lot of reason to do it, even if I never change. And that's how you can do the long-term progress, and you get out of this cycle, of this honeymoon cycle of always starting over again. But the real reason Why you want to get into this plateau, so to speak, is it's not really a plateau. It just seems like a plateau. And this is a weird quirk of our human perception of time, is that whenever we're in more of a long-term change state, over time we're going to create a lot more overall change. But in the short term, it doesn't feel like much is really happening. And yet, if you ask someone at any point in time, are you changing? They may say no. Do you think you're going to change much in the future? They'll say no. But when you look back on it and say, yeah, but have you changed much from the beginning? They'll say yes. And this happens in all forms of life. Think about 10 years ago, right? And 10 years ago, I was almost 32, right? Now, if you asked me 10 years ago, okay, Matt, you're 32, like, are you different than where you were 10 years ago when you were 22? Oh, yeah, definitely. Okay, are you different now than when you were 32? Oh, yeah, definitely. But yet, somehow, we humans keep thinking, especially as we get into adulthood, that we're at the end of our road from a change standpoint. That if you ask someone, are you going to be the person you are now for the rest of your life? Most people are like, yeah, pretty much, about this, give or take. My beliefs, my attitudes, my approaches, my habits, my lifestyle, my friends, all of these things in my life that make up my current state, I'm pretty sure this is just going to happen indefinitely, sure. But yet we know that doesn't happen. If you asked everybody and most people at 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50, if they would stay at that state, most of them would be like, yeah, sure. But if you ask them then, okay, looking back 10 years, are you still in the state you were at 10 years? They're like, oh no, I'm way different. So we need to learn from our past that we are always going to be changing. You're going to be way different 10 years from now than you are right now. Your friends, your hobbies, your beliefs, so much of you is going to change in ways you can't even perceive, and that goes for your body too. And I know it may not seem like it, but I guarantee it is, because it always does. It always happens. It's never not happened, right? But the reason why we need those long-term habits is because change isn't something we can cause nor stop. It's like an endlessly flowing river. Your body's going to be changing every second of every single day. Diet and exercise habits do not change your body. They direct the change that's already happening anyway. That's why I say you don't need to worry about changing your body. Everything that you need to have happen, protein synthesis and lipogenesis and all this stuff that makes your body change and adapt, it's already happening. All you're doing with your diet and exercise program is you're taking that river and you're directing it to where you want it to go. Now, if you don't have habits in place for the long term and you get stuck in this endless cycle, it's like getting stuck in a little whirlpool, right? But your change is going to happen long term, but if you're not directing it over the long term, who knows where it's going to end up? 10 years from now, you could look in the mirror or take a look at your physical abilities and be like, how the hell did I get here? What in the world happened to me? How did I get so far off track? And that's a lot of times the shock that people use, like those big transformation stories you see in the news and the media and stuff. They're like, I saw a picture of me, or I went to a physical, or I did this, and suddenly I realized, like, how did I get to this point? It's because they didn't have a long-term plan in place. So your body's going to change. There's nothing you can do about it. You're going to be different 10 years from now, 5 years from now. You're going to be different next year from now. And there's nothing you can do to stop the fact that you're going to be different. But you can do something to direct where that difference is happening. Are you going to be stronger or weaker? Fatter or thinner? Have better cardio or worse cardio? Are you going to be more athletic, or are you going to have trouble walking up a flight of stairs? That's a choice you can make, but you cannot stop change. So that's why we got to get out of this honeymoon cycle and stop causing a little bit of change and then going back to square one, a little bit of change and square one, and go for the long term with methods that you have an intrinsic motivation for, so you can direct your long-term change, and over time you end up where you want to be. Plus, every single day you're getting rewards by doing things that you have an intrinsic motivation for. You're eating, you're exercising, you're doing things that make you feel good today and give you long-term benefits as well. So a little philosophical perspective for you as always. Love to hear your thoughts on this down below in the comment section, or if you're listening to this, thank you very much for listening. As always, I appreciate the reviews on your podcast directory and stuff. Don't forget, books on Amazon.com and free ebooks over at reddeltaproject.com. Thanks so much for listening. I'll talk to you next week. Till then, be fit, live free.